Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of In the Eyes of Truth. Today with me is Guy Ames.
Eames, yeah.
Eames. I'm bad at family names. I butcher them for a living. If I only
That's
got
okay.
paid for doing that, I'd be a rich man right now. Guy is English, and he's not in England. He has been Russified, whether he noticed it or not. It's a creeping sickness when you get into Russia, the Russification. Next thing you know, you start sounding like a Russian. Uh, and Guy was not one of those when all of this started blowing up, particularly in 22. We had a big exodus of I won't call them immigrants. I call them expats. The people that came in to make money in Russia, work in Russia, make money in Russia. Were never planning on staying in Russia, becoming part of Russia, Russian culture. They're here to make the big bucks, and they skedaddled out as quickly as they physically could. And then there were the people that were in for long haul that stayed. Guy was one of these people. Welcome to the show. He is, by the way, uh, curator of two clubs, the Bridge Club and the Bridge Awards. Well, the Bridge Awards aren't a club; they're Bridge Awards. But he's curator of the Bridge Club, which is an Anglo-Russian club here in Moscow for social and business and overthrowing the Islamic king of England. I'm sorry, did I mention that? Well, lucky we're not in England, so we can't get arrested for that.
Exactly. It's a free country. You can speak your mind here.
Yeah, as opposed to the 15,000 or so people have been arrested in England over the last year for
Exactly.
daring to do that.
Well, Stas, thanks very much for having me. It's a real delight to be on your show. It's a real honor. We've known each other for some time, and we've talked about me coming online. And I think all the times that we've met have been at various social events
Hmm.
where there've been hundreds of foreigners, and the number of Westerners who are living in Russia is growing every day. Different types of visas are bringing them in. This traditional values visa, which means that you can actually move from many countries. You can move to Russia more easily than you could move within the Western world. So, for example, if you wanted to move to Germany or to the States from the UK, it would probably be more difficult than moving to Russia, despite all the sanctions and shit which is going on.
Well, tell me something. I mean, when you landed in Russia, so before you got off the plane, you got mugged, you were beaten by the time you hit the tarmac. They were taking your shoes. I mean, that's the stereotype that you hear in the West. Oh my God, you're going to Russia. You're going to get killed before you get off the plane. Well, so, in your experience was,
You know, it's the safest place, one of the safest places I've been in the world. I think it's only safe if it's only unsafe if you're some sort of gangster or you've been doing some sort of major crime. Then it's probably not very safe. You know, you could come off the plane and literally get arrested. But for all of us good guys out there, like yourself included, Stas, I don't think that's a danger at all. In fact, I can walk. I feel fine walking around. 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Moscow or in pretty much any city here in Russia without any risk at all. And even if my daughter or my wife also comes home at that time, and for some reason I've not picked them up or they've not got a taxi, we also don't feel particularly worried. It's really amazing. You couldn't feel like that in London. Where we live in London, it's just, when as soon as it's the hours of darkness, you have to, watch what you got in your pockets and what you're taking with you, and yeah, a completely different world.
so wait a minute, you don't live in the posh, cheeky residences where all the liberal elites with their bodyguards and closed gates live and feel absolutely comfortable and safe?
Well, even when you say that, there are a lot of people now, a lot of these sort of hoodlums, who are hanging around waiting to jump on those type of people on the most affluent areas. If you walk around in Mayfair in London, with a Rolex watch on or some expensive, watch on, or talking on your latest iPhone, walking along the road, there's a high chance someone's going to sail by on one of these little motorbikes and just grab it out of your hand while you're on the actual call.
That used to be, and it still is. That's a tradition in Italy, particularly in Rome, where and then this is from the 70s on. I mean, this is nothing new, 60s. They just have never been able to stop it for one reason or another, and they would have two gang members riding around, and they're grabbing purses, doing whatever, they're patrolling around, grabbing purses and then getting out. Um, So it's come to London. It's cultural enrichment.
Yeah, exactly. They must have like a nice booty bag there in the back of the motorbike, right? You know, all the
Yeah.
phones and wallets and handbags and stuff.
Yeah, I haven't been in London since 2013 or 14, I'm sorry. Um, I was there in 2013, and then and there were issues. Obviously, we wound up um, in a neighborhood of alternative law and order. Shall we put it that way? My wife wanted to go to a market. We got off the tube. We're walking in, and it's starting. It's March, so sun's setting already. And I'm former. I spent quite a bit of time in the infantry, so I'm walking around, my head swiveling all the time, looking at where I'm at. And I noticed that me and my wife and kids were walking, and the women folk are the only ones not covered from head to toe, and everybody's staring. Like, okay, stop, turn around. We're walking back to the main street. It's like, oh, look, the cars are nice. It's like, look around a little further. You know? It's like, oh, like, yes, oh, turn around. We're marching right back the 2 blocks we just walked past, and we're getting out. But that was 2013. I mean, like I said, that was 2013, 2014. I was reading a lecture in a conference, and man, there were a lot of people on the streets, and there were normal people. And I'm not talking druggies. I mean, couples sitting there reading magazines in their sleeping bags, pensioners with a cup out. I mean, sober. They're not, they're not pissed. They're not drugged up. And I was asking a guy flying back. He's like, "Oh yeah, the banks went after all the people that were in debt for their apartments and all." And this was right after during a recession, and they're just kicking people left. English people were getting kicked out on the streets, and from what I understand, it's not gotten any better.
Well, it is actually quite scary. We made the final decision in 2021 to move to Russia, and it was a very rational decision. We had like a list of about 20 different factors we'd take into consideration, and the UK is now the whole medical system, healthcare has really gone downhill. I was taken into hospital waiting 8 hours before I got any medical help at
Oh,
all.
jeez.
And that's in like one of the richest areas in London. Um, you can't get doctor's appointments. Uh, um, just the transport, public transport costs you an absolute fortune. Just
Oh
going
yeah,
from
yeah.
a mile down the road could cost you like £5. Whereas in here in Moscow for 70 rubles, you can go, like an hour on the super fast metro where it's all clean and there's a train every 2 minutes or every 1 minute. It's just night and day. And in the UK, there are a lot of things going on which most Russians just aren't aware of. Things like the number of people who visit food banks on a daily basis. They just don't have enough food to eat. We're talking about millions of people. The same thing with the child poverty. There are
Hmm.
millions of kids in child poverty who go to school without having any breakfast. They're hungry. My wife worked as a like a extra teacher in one of those schools, and they had to feed them cornflakes. They had like cornflakes and milk, and they would actually be feeding the kids, not as a snack food, but just because the kids were hungry when they came to school. A lot of people I know, they have to make the choice every day. Are they going to eat a dinner or are they going to switch the heating on? They'll switch the gas on in the evening. It's really
Hey,
sad.
the president of Kellogg was about 4 or 5 years ago said, we're looking at the dinner market now. Kellogg's not just Kellogg's cornflakes aren't just for breakfast. They're a dinner food because if you just have a bowl of Kellogg's cornflakes and throw maybe some strawberries in there, if you can afford those, it's cheaper than actually cooking, say, a real meal and eating real food. So it's not a snack. It's your 3 meals a day. There you go.
It's,
More
it
Kellogg
really is.
cornflakes.
It really is crazy, yeah. And then when you look at things like, the education, here you don't get all these problems with these 50 types of genders and whatever. It's all very clear cut.
Oh, jeez.
You don't have gender studies as a topic that you have to go into. You don't have all these politically correct sort of problems left, right, and center that you can't open your mouth and say something normal because you might offend somebody or somebody might not like that. You don't have people saying we don't do maths in Russia. In the UK, the Minister of Education said we don't do maths. I mean, what future has the UK got if people don't do maths? And most of the time, he's talking about arithmetics. He's not even talking about some, complicated algebra. He's just talking about counting. And if you look at the way that people learn to read and write, in Russia, they learn stuff off by heart. So they can learn several pages of a book, which is good for your brain. It's good for your memory.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the UK, you're not expected to learn anything like that, and they can hardly read and write. The kids that my wife was also teaching, they were like 7, 8, 9 years old. A lot of them, you couldn't identify what they're writing as being actual letters. It was just some sort of squiggles, and and the teacher was just say, "Oh, that's fine, that's not a problem. Over time they'll learn, or don't worry about it." But you should worry about it. Either kids are going to learn to read and write and count, or they're not. It's just a sort of dumbed down version of education, which is very sad because we're paying lots of taxes in the UK. And what do you get out of it? You get this sort of, 50 genders, kids becoming cats and not learning to read and write or any respect at all.
Has it gone down the same route that the U.S. went? I mean, the official illiteracy statistics last year for the U.S. was 21% total illiteracy. That's people that can't recognize the alphabet to reading at a up to a
Wow.
third grade
That's enormous,
American
huh?
level, which is like first grade in Russia, and
Oh my God.
32% partial literacy, where they read from a third to sixth grade U.S. That's like first to third grade Russia. Uh,
Shocking. That
is
really
it
is
that
shocking.
bad yet, or is that or is it still better than the U.S. has?
Yeah, and then it comes on to things like geography. I remember seeing pictures in the States of people being shown a map of the world and
Oh
then
yeah.
being asked, "Where's the USA?" And like only one in three could tell you where the USA
Oh
was,
yeah, yeah. Most people, yeah. If they're younger than 30, good luck if you're gonna find one that can find anything. Maybe they'll find the USA, but they never they can't identify anything else. Maybe Canada, Mexico, very big maybe.
That's
Um,
scary.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's one of the reasons why we're living here, right? In Russia, where they have decent standards of education, people want to learn, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are moving here from Western countries. This year we've had several thousand people moving over. Some of them in this traditional value scheme, some of them being repatriated. So their roots are in Russia. Maybe they were born here or their parents are born here. People moving from other countries. Obviously, as you know, several million Ukrainians have moved to Russia because they feel there'll be a better future here. They don't want all that Ukrainianization which is going on in the south. A lot of reasons for people to move to Russia. And the crazy thing is, most people in the West are just not aware of this at all. It's one of these sort
yeah.
of disinformation things. You can't talk about people moving to Russia because that will be some sort of, that will be sacrilege. That will be against the whole Western idea that people have got to be moving to the West, right? Because that's where the dream future is, the land of the future.
Yeah, I've been online with some of these flaming woke nut jobs. Like, fine, take these people. Sure, okay. So let's see. The most productive conservative people to have the most kids and the Christian. Sure, we'll take them. It's a no-brainer. Yeah. How much work do you do? Oh, you don't. Yeah, okay, fine. Keep living off the system until it collapses. We'll just take the productive people. Thank you. Bye bye. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, you've insulted me. Take these people. Okay, sure. Give us
I
your
think the
tired,
other
give us
thing is,
your
which
hungry.
most Europeans aren't aware of, is also if you look at, say, the audience in a theatre, and this might be sort of sound very racist to people in the West, but you look at the audience in the theatre, and they're almost all of them white.
Mhm.
Whereas, people in the West, they love this diversity business, but me being a white person, I quite feel at home when I can see, I'm living in a European country and I see a lot of other white people, mostly white faces. I'm not saying that, if you came in there and you're from Africa or, Asia or Japan or somewhere, you would not have any problems at all. But it's still quite, good feeling just to feel that you're amongst, your people, as it were. And in London, you don't feel that at all. You feel like, 1 in 10 people is a sort of a Londoner. All the rest of God knows where they come from and what they're doing there. Obviously,
And,
they probably know, but
the first time I was in London was in '98, and then I didn't go back to London until 2013. And I was shocked. There were no English. There's any
they're
accent but
gone.
in
They're
English.
gone, man. I don't know where
I
they've gone, but
I went to Canterbury to see a friend with a family. It's like, English accents. You have to go 100 miles outside of London to go, oh, okay, so this is where the English are still, there's still English here. That's interesting. Yeah, London, it's like there's almost no English. That was back 2012.
Yeah.
13. So yeah, it was a kind of a pretty good culture shock right there.
Well, they're now talking about bringing in more diversity into like the villages and into small towns. They say there's not enough diversity in the villages. They're too white. Um,
So what happens to you if you say, no, we don't like this?
I think you get counted as being like a racist. You can't talk about the local people who were brought up in that area. That's taboo. You just can't say those things, and it's really shocking. It's like wave after wave of this new political correctness, this sort of wokeness. And it's very difficult to counteract it.
You know, there was I think it was an English footballer who was quoted as saying, a black guy, was quoted as saying, Africans need to get kick the white people out of Africa and take Africa back. Well, okay, it's no self-awareness, zero, zip. It's an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, in our club, and I think you visited the bridge a couple of times. We're very welcoming. We've got a lot of Westerners there. We have around 100 people attending each meeting.
Mhm.
We have a handful of people from other countries, from like India and from a few
Mhm.
Africans and Japanese even, and we welcome everybody. But on the whole, we are, as you said at the beginning of the call, we're sort of either Anglo-Saxons or other Europeans, a few
Mhm.
Germans and French and Italians and whatever. As you probably know, there are around 10,000 Italians living here in Russia, and I think they
Oh,
all feel
okay.
pretty much at home. Every day, I think there are more and more Italians coming, and yeah, everybody loves them. And as you know, we're all very well treated. The
Mhm.
locals, so long as we like Russia and we make an effort. They treat us really like we're very, very welcome here. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with immigration, but it has to be smart immigration. You need to take the skill sets that your country actually needs, not just people with no skill and no work experience. People, doctors, engineers, those types of people, not everybody off the street, and in a small enough numbers that they can assimilate. Because the tendency of human beings is they form their own communities of like-minded or
It's
cultural
true.
people. And if you start getting many communities of different culture, well, you get what you get in London, obviously, in the UK. And sooner or later, that all blows up. You can't have radically different communities living under one roof. It doesn't happen. It
Yes.
leads to conflict.
Well, here they're very much for the integration.
Hmm.
The last couple of years, I've got quite a lot of experience working with the various migrant groups.
Hmm.
As you know, at the moment, we're helping people to move to Russia from Western countries, and we've helped a few dozen people move here, get their residence permits, get their bank accounts opened, apartments, find work, etc.
Hmm.
I also worked, that means I also visit quite often this Sakharova, the big migration
Oh,
center.
yeah, yeah.
They can process 10,000 people a day there, Stas. Can you imagine 10,000 people a day?
Really?
That's got to be one of the biggest migration centers in the world, right? I mean, when people were coming to the States, was it Staten Island? They were all coming through by the Statue of Liberty or wherever it was. That's at least in the mythological, old times. And this Sakharova, that's a little bit like that. You have 10,000 people a day going through, and a minority of them are sort of white Europeans. It's probably maybe a couple of dozen a day compared to thousands of the Central Asians. But what I can say is that they're very well organized. The way that they're checking all the documents, they're issuing work permits, residence permits. If they don't get that, they get deported pretty quickly. If
Yeah,
they do anything wrong, they get deported. They're out. Which is
that's
which is
that's something to clear up. Most of those Central Asians are temporary labor. They get labor permits. They're not
yeah, they're temporary
full-time
labor.
migration.
Yeah, I've also worked with the Indians, and they're bringing in Putin and Modi have discussed bringing in 1 million, 2 million Indian workers. But when they talk about that, they are very strictly brought in to work in factories or in food processing places or in the fields for a very strict on contract for a year
Hmm.
maximum at the beginning. They're all living together, they're working together, they're they're monitored, where exactly they are. They even have a special app on the phone to monitor where they are and is it the same place that they're meant to be working. It's nothing like in the UK where people are just arriving and God knows where they just disappear into society. And as you probably know, in the UK we have over 1 million illegal people who are just living in all these hotels and doing God knows what. In Russia, that's not the case. In Russia, the people who are here, they're working their asses off. They're working like 10, 11 hours a day. They're delivering all this food for us. You just call on Yandex and you get a food delivery in like 20 minutes. You can get, taxi arriving in 2 minutes and everything is super convenient. And that's what a lot of the migrants are doing. They're earning over $1,000 a month, some between one and $2,000, a lot of those people. And they're working night and day, to make our lives comfortable, which I don't really have a problem with because I wouldn't want to drive one of those scooters around, in the snow, uh, 12 hours a day. Yeah.
Oh, there's actually quite a few Russians that drive those scooters around. It's more than $1,000. They're making those some of those deliveries are making up to 120,000 rubles.
Yeah.
So you're looking almost $2,000 a month, which is it. Someone will say in the U.S., "Oh, 2 grand's not that bad." Well, w when you pay for a real loaf of bread in the U.S., not that Wonder Bread chemical crap. Well,
Yeah.
real
The
loaf of
chemical, the
bread,
squeezy stuff, right? You can just sort of,
yeah, that never rots. It can lay there for like three
2 years
months.
later,
You
it
know,
looks the same.
yeah. I mean, a real loaf of bread in the US will cost you like $5, $6. In Russia, will cost you like
Really?
50 cents, 70
Yeah.
cents. So you
Yeah.
can't compare it. Just, 2000, equivalent $2,000 in Russia is like more like $6,000, $7,000 in the US these days for those
Exactly.
who
And the
are
tax is
looking,
lower, right?
yeah,
If you're self-employed, you're only paying like 4 or 5% tax. Um,
6.
at 6%, I think that's
Mhm.
if you have the like if you're individual entrepreneur, right? You can also
It's
have that.
both. It's both now.
Oh, both. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's pretty low, right? 6%
Oh yeah.
tax, and that's all in. That includes your medical insurance and everything. You're there. Whereas in the UK, it can be like 30, 40, 50%, half your
Oh yeah.
wages are disappearing
Well,
into tax.
if you work for an employer, your tax base is 13%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of
So
people aren't. A lot of people like the courier drivers we're talking about, they're on a sort of a special deal.
yeah. So
Experimental schemes.
well, yeah, it's not a bad deal. Well, you guys working with who you should be working with, concentrating on is farmers. Uh, ri-
Farmers, yeah. Mm.
yes, American farmers, as a matter of fact. What few people realize, right now, on average, between 50 to 55 farming families lose their family farms every single day in the U.S.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a bloodbath. And they're bankrupt. Their farmer suicides are insane. If you ever read into it, I mean, it's just insane. These people they get broken. They got no place to go. They can't afford the land in the U.S. They can't afford, and Russia, for, as much as Russia has pushed people to go into farming, and it's been a huge success. Russia is one of the biggest. It feeds a third of the world. There's over 1 million hectares of prime land that is still needing a tilling hand. If you're going into acres, that's like 2.5 million acres.
It's
Uh,
huge, isn't it? It's a
and that's
vast country.
prime land, prime land. I'm not talking secondary. I'm not talking even grazing land for cattle. I'm talking just prime agricultural land.
Wow. That's incredible. And when you're driving, it is a bit like the States, I guess. It's a huge country, but it's actually bigger, isn't it? It's like
Oh
11
yeah.
time zones and you can fly for 9, 10 hours and it's still in Russia, and if
Oh
you
yeah.
flew from Kaliningrad all the way to near to Alaska, it'd probably be like 11, 12 hours,
Oh
right?
no, no,
So
it's much longer than that. I used to work in Sakhalin. I was a consultant in northern Sakhalin on the oil fields there, and we would fly business class from Moscow to Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk. That's that Long Island for those that don't know, and that's
mhm.
a 10-hour flight.
Wow.
And Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk is not the furthest. You still got all of Kamchatka to go, which is another like
Yeah, it's
1,000 miles or a
uh,
thousand kilometers. So and that's from Moscow. That's not
yeah.
from even the edge, not counting Kaliningrad, the edge of Russia. That's another hour flight. So yeah, it's you could fly to New York from Moscow faster than flying to the edge of Russia.
Yeah, people forget that if there weren't these barriers, you could fly to obviously to the UK for 3 or 4 hours, and that's only a third of the way than if you're flying east. Yeah, it's a huge country, and I love that. In fact, I've traveled around a lot in the country, and there's so many things to see, and so many of these. We started working with RT this week, with the
Oh.
RT documentary,
Hmm.
and watching some of their movies and stuff. It's amazing, the regions in Russia and some of these travel bloggers. It's so cool, I mean, something quite appeals to me, and again, it was one of these things that nobody, your program is called the Voice of Truth, right? Or
Oh, the eyes in the eyes of truth.
yeah, the eyes of the truth. There you go.
Yeah.
The eyes. If you go out and see all these places, which 99% of Westerners just don't even know that they exist,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, farmers. I mean, by the way, any farmers listening and you want to change the scenery and you don't want the government climbing up your arse every 5 minutes and letting you actually do things like farm and not taxing you to hell and back. There was a company back in the 2000s. It was an English company that was a joint venture with a Russian company, and they had bought up. Foreigners are not allowed to own agricultural land. You can rent it, but you're not allowed to own it. But once you become a citizen, you can own it. Every other type of land, yeah, you can own. Um, but they had gotten a bunch of land. Actually, they got the Russian beer industry back up and running because what they were doing is they were bringing British farming families over
Oh,
to
really?
farm these huge pieces of land. And they were telling, I mean, they would pay for them to come over, to move them over, but they had to grow the crop, commercial crop that they were told to grow. And they were growing hops because the British market was demanding hops. And they were also buying from local Russian farmers too. And some beer startups in Russia found out that they had tons of hops. And they just went in there and started buying them up. So it never really reached the British markets because
Yes.
it got bought up locally. And it really was because they had started growing it for the British market and the Russian market wasn't growing it in volume that they needed. It got the Russian beer industry
Oh, that's great. I mean,
growing fast.
you've seen how the beer market is improving. The
Oh,
quality
yeah.
of the beer is much better than it was, 10, 20 years ago. It's not the Zhigalovsky beer that we had 30 years ago. I mean, the
Oh, no, I like
Fogies.
Jagolovsky beer. It's a decent beer for a light beer.
Yeah,
But
well, it's improved. It's improved a lot, right? I mean, you could
it,
you could still get drunk on it 30 years ago, but it was definitely not consistent. It could be anything, right? You'd get it
right,
out of
right.
those big barrels, and it could be anything that came out. Yeah, that's interesting what you say about the farming families. One of my relatives, in fact, is a British farmer here, John Kabisky,
Oh,
and
okay.
he has a herd of dairy cattle. I think around
Hmm.
5,000 dairy cattle, and he feeds those cattle from the land which he's grown all the crops on, to
Hmm.
feed them. And it's just vast, these industries, they're huge. And like you say, there's a huge potential out there for people to come over. Obviously, if they do come over, it's important that they learn the language, that they sort of muck in. But yeah, the opportunities compared to the West are sort of night and day. And the price of the land is still very low
Oh,
compared
yeah.
to the West. It's just funny prices.
As long as you get away from Moscow and St. Petersburg and Yekaterinburg, the bigger cities, yeah,
It's true.
you
It's
get
true.
an hour out. Yeah, for people who don't know, Tver, which is the northwest of Moscow, it's about 180, about 200 kilometers, so about 120 miles. It's not great agricultural land. It's forest and swamp and those types of areas, lots of forest. I had a buddy who bought two houses with a hectare of land each. Um, Electricity. I think he had gas. I'm not sure if he had gas hookup or not. But he had electricity, and the water is well water. Um, he bought in this little village. The village was, the youth had left, and there's just old people. And he bought these two houses for something like 200,000 rubles,
Wow.
or three
That's nothing.
grand for
That's
both of
nothing.
them.
Wow, that's just nothing,
I mean,
right?
the houses are small wooden houses, right? With an
But you can
with an
live in them.
outhouse, but you can build on a bathroom and run the water out of a well, so it's not a huge addition in cost, and nobody's even gonna come and inspect it. Just do it yourself, and that's it. But yeah, for 3 grand, basically, a little yeah, but 3 grand.
Yeah, I can't imagine buying anything in the UK for 3 grand. I don't think it exists. Even even a garage could cost more than that. And as you say, the price of buying them, also the upkeep. We've got a nice country house, like four or five bedrooms.
Hmm.
I just paid the gas bill today from the last month, from March, and I think it was something like 4,000 rubles.
Oh
That's
wow,
what,
that's really cheap.
$60, is it? Yeah, in US. And if that was in the UK, that the gas bill, especially because we have the gas switched on night and day. We don't even
Hmm.
have it on in the mornings and off in the evenings. It's just switched on all the time. I'm sure in the UK that gas bill would be definitely over $1,000, for that month. Yeah, it's just
I've
crazy.
I've got a pretty decent sized house, and then I'm not gonna say how big or anything like that, but I think my gas bill came out, and I heat the water off of it obviously too,
Sure.
not just the house. So January, I think was about 10,000 rubles. So
Wow.
that's what about $120
Yeah, that's in
in
the
American.
coldest period, right? When it was like
Yeah, yeah,
minus
yeah.
minus
Yeah, it was
20 degrees in
yeah,
Celsius.
yeah, yeah. It's minus 20, minus about 25, that like that during
Yeah,
especially during the
yeah.
night. So yeah, and it was
Well,
nice.
ours
25
probably would
degrees
have got
inside the
similar
house.
to that in January, but in March it's already sort of, it's the for
Oh
last
yeah.
month.
Yeah, in the summer, you're just heating the water tank off of the boiler. So yeah, it's maybe like $20, $30,
Uh-huh.
if
Uh-huh.
that much.
So, Stas, you mentioned some of the people moving to Russia. Do you know a lot of people who are moving over here? Because our company, Moscow Connect, will be very happy to help anybody who needed a hand. If there's any part of the move that they weren't well, they were worried about, let's say. Yeah. Just today, we had a call with a guy from the UK. He's selling his house, over £1 million worth of house. He's completely
Ooh.
fed up with the UK. He wants to move to Russia, buy a property here, wants us to sort out all the paperwork. And it can be a bit daunting when you're on your own or if you don't know the
Mhm.
language, like the Sakharov that I was talking about earlier, or you just translate something wrong and then your paperwork doesn't fit together, or you get the wrong letter, for wrong police report from the UK because you need that as one of the documents. And
Yeah.
lots of small things could go wrong. You rent an apartment, you don't realize how important registration is, right? These sort of small things. But if you don't get the registration in that house, then you can't get all your papers in order. And some people might say, "Oh, that's not a problem. I got a 3 month visa. I'll sort it out." But you'll reach the stage where you can't sort it out, and then suddenly you're panicking and paying crazy money and thinking how you're going to go out of the country and get a new visa and come back in again, and all the rest of it. Yeah, but you must come across a lot of these people, right, who are like moving from different countries.
I've known quite a few people that moved. I don't know anyone right now. I occasionally I get comments, but it's mostly, a lot of people write, "Yeah, I really want to move," but there's a big difference between, "Yeah, I really want to move," and "I'm ready to sell my house, pack the bags, and let's go."
It's true.
It's a gap. It's like when they asked the youth, and I remember there was one study in Russia, and there was one actually from the UK, and like 80, 90% want to leave the country. That was the title. But then they asked them, "Would you like to live in another country?" "Yeah, I'd like to live in like." But yeah, yeah, I'd like to live, and I've packed my bags, and I actually have the money to go live in another country. Are two very, very different things. Yeah,
It's
I'd like
true.
to go visit the moon. I'm not planning on immigrating to the moon anytime soon, but it's a big question. A lot of people, they have the fantasy in their mind, but actually doing that actual move, like a guy selling his house for £1 million. How much is he going
Yeah.
to get taxed on that? I'm just curious.
Well, that's a good question. It's in the UK we have this crazy capital gains tax, which you can get caught up. If it's your sole residence and you live there so many years, blah blah
Mhm.
blah, you can sort of get away with it. But there are all sorts of dodgy rules. In Russia it's more straightforward with all the
Yeah, yeah.
taxes, as you know. You earn this amount, you pay the tax. You made this profit, you pay tax.
Mhm.
In the UK and the US, they have these, crazy systems where you need an accountant and it might take you months and you're not even at the end of the day you're not sure if you sort of underpaid and you're worried that you might get jumped on by the tax people. And fortunately here we don't have those problems. You pay your tax, it's all digitally organized, end of story, move on and
Mhm.
sleep tight. It's good.
Well, for English farmers, I remember there's talk some like massive inheritance taxes that basically no farm can afford.
Yeah,
Uh,
they just brought that in recently, I think, with the Starmer government. They're just taxing people to death, I think. They're screwing up the whole economy. There's almost nothing I can see which they're doing which is right, which is so embarrassing because, until 10, 20 years ago, I was so proud to be British. And when I was living here in Russia, I was like giving examples from, Europe and other countries about, how you should do things better. Now I realize it's like now Russia can actually give the examples to those other countries. And, we should be receiving incoming delegations of foreign politicians and whatever, we could show them, well, this is well
oh yeah.
organized. This is how you organize a new university, a school, a hospital. This is how you build a road. And 10, 20 years ago, it was the other way around. It's incredible how fast things are changing.
Guy, one of the things you should do, if I do say so myself, is advertise the fact that Russia feeds a third of the world, and Europe, quite literally, and the UK may be facing starvation this year because nobody's quite realized this yet.
All right.
But not only has Europe cut itself off from Russian fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, which is 40% of the world's fertilizer,
Well,
but they were counting on because European fertilizer plants have all closed.
yeah.
Gas is too expensive. Every chemical is
I
way too
wonder
expensive.
why.
Yeah, yeah, right. But now Qatar, through because it's mostly exporting gas, and gas is used for a lot of the chemical fertilizers, was responsible for another 30%. Nothing's getting
Wow.
out. And farming, plowing season well, depending where you're at, it's already here.
Hmm.
In the UK, maybe there in another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the US, the fertilizer prices have doubled since all this started. So I can only imagine what's going on in the UK. So hey, I mean, the
That's
reality
crazy.
is, you minus the chemical fertilizers out of agriculture, you're going to have half the yields, if even that much.
That is
That's
just crazy,
starvation.
isn't it? I mean, last year they had terrible weather as well, so
Mm.
nothing was growing. It was either waterlogged or it was dry, too dry, and farmers were just in despair. So the yields really went down. And as you say, with these extra costs, we already have a big cost of living crisis in the UK. You go into a supermarket, things costing twice, three times more than they used to cost. And the poor farmers, they're being squeezed. The supermarkets are making less money. The people don't have so much disposable income. It's getting really bad. And there's so many things that we could be from Russia exporting to Europe at good prices, but that doesn't work either because of the this EU common agricultural policy. I mean, we saw that right with the Ukrainians wanted to join the EU and they wanted to export all their grain to the EU, and the EU farmers were like ready to kill them. The
Oh yeah.
Polish and whatever were at the border, like, we're going to burn your trucks and we're going to stop you
Oh, they
coming
did
in.
burn their trucks. What are you, we're gonna, they did burn their trucks. And
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
more than that.
And of course, there's big questions about sort of whether there's radioactive, or chemically disturbed and stuff. All of the Ukrainian grain as well. Yeah,
I'm not so worried about radioactive because most of that's washed out. I mean, seriously, there's like 10,000 people that live in the Chernobyl zone. They don't live in,
right.
and some live on the edges of Chernobyl, the city. Chernobyl's still working. It never shut down. There's only one reactor that had the meltdown. There's two more reactors that are still pumping out electricity for
It's
all
crazy,
these
isn't
years. Yeah, think about it. It's not quite the dead zone everybody thinks, but yeah, and by the way, the press gangs are now going into the Chernobyl zone to look for people because apparently a lot of people ran over there into the Chernobyl zone.
hiding like
Yeah,
mad
yeah,
dogs
yeah.
in the forest. Yeah,
In the forests, yeah, because there are very few people there. I mean, 10,000 is not that big for something the size of York County, something like that big.
yeah.
And it's only 10,000 residents. It's like medieval. It's not even medieval levels,
That's an
for
interesting story. Yes,
so
yes.
yeah, but but you're absolutely right. So that's a good selling point right there. You don't want your kids to starve. Immigrate now.
No, that really is important actually. I've been keeping my eye on some of these things, but things are moving so quickly, right? And
Right.
it's irreversible a lot of these things because
Oh yeah,
either
yeah.
you plant the everything now and you get it, you get it done, and that's it, or you don't, and you've just lost the season. A lot of people, they have this sort of idea that everything will be fine soon. Dubai will be great, you know.
You're right.
Russia and the West, all the relations will be solved, and they don't realize it's a geopolitical shift.
Oh yeah.
Things are shifting really quickly. It's like, a volcano exploding or something. It's not going to be the same again. And, you shouldn't have those sort of fantasies that it's going to be the same again. It's not going to be the same again. The Arabs are going to decide which ships go through those straits, right? And not the Americans or the Brits or someone else. So,
Oh, Dubai and all those places are I won't say they're going to be dead, but they are not going to be anywhere near where they were before. The
yeah,
myth of their neutrality, it's a safe place, it's gone. It's
yeah,
gone. So a lot of business is going to leave. It's going to be looking for new ports. Maybe Russia will be one of those ports, Singapore, places like that. But those areas. But again, I mean, that cut in oil and gas is long term. You're absolutely right. Now they're targeting each other's because the U.S. and Israel keep up in the ante. They're now starting to target the actual infrastructure for the oil and gas.
yeah,
Yeah, this is long term. I mean, you
yeah,
can't switch on the tap and everything's blown up. You have to rebuild it.
yeah.
That's long term. So yeah, that's going to be big problems. And when are the reserves are very low all across Europe right now, the gas reserves. And there's not going to be much gas coming into pump it except American extremely expensive gas.
Exactly. It's very
So
expensive and it's very,
yeah.
very unecological because it's all fracked and stuff. I understand there's actually it's coming to a sort of peak in the States. I mean, I know people have been talking about peaks for years, but
Mhm.
in terms of the actual production price, right, is getting to the stage where a lot of the gas which is available is actually uneconomical to get out of the ground. So
Well, it's an uneconomical at today's prices. You can always raise the prices. So sooner
it's
or
true.
later, the price gets to a point where you're desperate enough that it becomes economical. But yeah, actual U.S. gas pump the amount of gas produced has actually been in decline. It's not a sharp decline, but it's been in decline for the last couple
It's
of
actually in
years.
decline, yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what do you think about what would we need to do to get some of these so-called expats in Dubai to move to Russia, some of the entrepreneurs, to move here? Do you think there's any chance of that?
Um, my idea was, but apparently Vladimir Vladimirovich didn't hear about it or didn't pick up on it, was to make something like Novorossiysk into a free port.
Right.
Anybody can come in and out, you just can't leave outside of it. But we're not going to ask you where the money came from that you deposit in our banks either. So,
That's
that would drive Europe insane. That would just drive the
It would.
Europe.
It would. I mean, we speak to a lot of property developers and we say, okay, foreigners buying property here, are there going to be lots of questions about where the money came from? Because a lot of it's in cash. And they
Right.
say, well, actually, 9 out of 10 of our clients pay in cash and nobody asks them where it comes from because they're buying the properties, they're bringing the money into the country. That's a positive thing. They're investing in Russia. And at that stage, there are no questions asked. Whereas if you want to buy a property in the UK, you're taking more than £2,000 out of the bank and people are asking, where did it come from and, the origins.
2,000 pounds? That's nothing.
Yeah,
That's a grocery bill.
exactly. It's crazy. It's crazy, man. Whereas here, we don't have those problems yet, which is good. Yeah.
That's very good. Yeah, it's a little bit above my present pay grade, maybe in my future pay grade, to bring in that kind of cash into the country. Um, but yeah, Russia's biggest problem, I mean, flat out, is marketing. Russia sucks at marketing, and getting the point out that there's all these opportunities, people just don't hear about them.
Yeah, there are so many opportunities. In fact, Stanislav, at this moment, that's a good opportunity for me to plug our Bridge Awards because the Bridge Awards is something that we thought up as a group, and we just launched it recently on the 26th of February. We're supported by the Moscow city government with the Agency of Strategic Initiatives. Now we're also talking with some media partners and some other groups out there. Basically, it's a way to recognize foreigners who have done amazing things in Russia, whether it's in business, whether it's in sport, in culture, you name it. We've got 10 different directions. And the interesting thing is, we brought up this idea originally with the Maria Zakharova, from the Russian
Oh
Foreign
yes, of
Office.
course, of course.
And she loved the idea. We discussed it for 20 minutes with her. And she said, like, people historically, like Ekaterina the Great, she was German and she moved here and she completely changed Russia. She did so much for Russia. And if you think about it, historically, thousands of foreigners have moved to Russia they're all, this Russian word, the aventurist, we're all like adventurers, it's a
Hmm.
bit like the crazy people who went to the States originally or to Australia or whatever. We're all like explorers, all the people who come here. And so many people have come over the years, done these amazing things, opened factories, companies, in manufacturing, restaurants, service industries, and just stayed here. And their kids have stayed here, and they've just become part of Russian society. So this Bridge Awards, which we will finally actually hand out the awards on the 18th of June. This is the first year we're doing it, is a way to really recognize these people. And we think it's going to be a real, like a sort of a carrot, for the people who are coming from the West to see Russia is a land of opportunity. It is a place where you can settle. People will welcome you with open arms.
Hmm.
They will help you, and they'll give you an opportunity to go ahead and make it, which is cool. I mean, I feel that I've benefited by that same approach. And there's so many people out there who we've just not heard of. The people in agriculture, and there are Olympic gold medalists, have moved to Russia, changed their nationality, and won gold medals in the Olympics even for Russia. So I'm really looking forward to meeting a lot of the people which are going to be real stars here on our show.
Well, not to plug my own, or not to toot my own horn. I personally, as a director of supply chain in Cameron and then in Halliburton, and within about, let's see, so it's from 2007 to 2014, about 7 years. I brought in about 250 billion, so a million, I'm sorry, a quarter of a billion dollars into the Russian economy,
Wow.
directly into the Russian economy, the Russian suppliers. So yeah, that and I even saved a huge manufacturing plant in 2008. That was when
Wow.
everything was collapsing because they lost their forging plant. They were one of my main suppliers, and I convinced the Cameron leadership that we need to buy a lot more, not cut orders like everybody's cutting orders, but buy to
Mhm.
keep them afloat. I mean, we got it cheaper anyways, but it was huge inventory. It's like, well, we're going to eat it up anyways. The forgings, oil and gas forgings. I mean, once everything bounces back. So yeah, it saved the plant, saved like 4,000 jobs
Oh well,
kept it
that's
running.
amazing. It's a good story. I mean, so many of these Western companies that come in here, people like IKEA and BP and whatever,
Hmm.
they made a killing here. Okay, they left from their own accord or because the
Hmm.
Western government sort of forced them to leave, but they made a lot of money while they were here. And people over the years, or not everybody, but over the years, people have made a lot. And you've been out to the Donbass, for example,
Oh yeah, plenty of
Donetsk,
times.
Lugansk. They were both formed with British industrialists who set up coal mines and steel mills and other stuff out there, and they became part of the society there. So this is a historical process, right? And
Oh, not just British. There were plenty of Russians and Germans who were
no, of
coming in
course,
there
of course, of
from every
course.
direction.
Yeah,
So
I'm
yeah.
I'm thinking of John Hughes, in Donetsk, which is Yuzovka, originally.
Mhm.
And I know that there was also a Scottish guy in Lugansk who was one of the sort of the founding fathers of the city. I forget what his name is, unfortunately.
Oh, don't call him British. I know lots of Scots. They get through. I was like, wait a minute. It's like
Well, I'm
we're not
English, so
British.
we
We're
all call
Scott.
them
Well,
British. They're all
yeah,
British.
yeah.
Yeah,
They,
it's
they get
it's
touchy.
interesting. Yeah, from the John Hughes, there's actually a
Yeah.
huge archive of all their documents
Hmm.
in Cardiff in Wales. A lot of them in Russian, some in English,
Hmm.
from that original company. This sort of this Novorossiya, or new Russian
Hmm.
company, which invested and worked there. Yeah. And also before, I don't know, how long we can talk, but it's also worth mentioning that, all these foreigners who are over here, a lot of them are doing well, a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of them are, having a good time. And we, as a company, Moscow Connect and also the Bridge, we organize lots of cool events. And in fact, on St. Patrick's Day, which is coming up in 2 days' time, we have a big party. So if there's anyone out there who wants to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, that'll be on the 17th in the Tap and Barrel. And hopefully we'll be able to share the link, in
Hmm.
your channel after the broadcast. Yeah,
Do they have to speak with an Irish accent?
absolutely. That's an absolute essential. They have to be able to
Ah,
dance like
bloody
an Irish
hell.
person and drink like an Irish person. The accent's
Well, the,
okay.
the the drinking's not a problem. It's the dancing that may be a problem.
But you can just drink, and after you've been drinking, you'll dance, and then the Irish accent comes as well, so it's all good.
Though I'll tell you, I had an Irish girlfriend when I was in the States in university, and as much as I could drink back then, I don't drink that much anymore. As much as I could drink back then as a Russian, she scared me. She scared me very much.
They
So
are wild, some of the Irish, like they're
it's
really
not
wild.
human. It's bloody not human. The amount of volume that she could put down was just freaking and still operate and look sober. It was one episode where she was blacked out and operating a car, and you would never tell that she's been drinking. It's like, holy crap, that's not human. It's not human. How the hell? I mean, I put down that much whiskey, I'm out. Or you're damn well telling I'm drunk. You couldn't tell. Just walking,
Well,
talking. She
this
couldn't
is
hit.
what connects the Irish and the Russians, right? They can consume crazy amounts of alcohol and still do things, like
Well, the Irish are a separate class all by themselves.
it's true. It's true. It's
It's
probably like
scary.
in their genes, right? They're survival. They're just ready to survive, They
Yeah.
survived in the States, they're surviving over here, they survived in the potato famine and all the rest of it, yeah.
Well, they survived quite well. I mean, the Kennedys were they came to power, but they were racketeers in their own time. Unlike the Italians, they didn't shoot their enemies; they shared profit with their enemies and
Okay.
bought them over, and then became president of America.
Very
As opposed
powerful,
to Al
very
Capone, it
powerful.
was just rotting from syphilis, and the rest of the Italians. So they were smarter at the end of the day. Yeah, Canadian Mist. That's owned by the Kennedys.
Yeah, amazing, really.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
there's still that Kennedy who's working with Trump, right? The one who's
Yeah.
in the
Oh yeah, yeah.
healthcare area. Yeah.
JFK. Yeah, so his family, I mean, in the 20s, they were running whiskey into the US across the border.
Amazing, really.
Yeah, yeah,
That's an
Canadian
interesting
Mist.
history.
That's their company up in Canada.
Uh-huh.
Canadian Mist whiskey. So yeah. So it's
Well,
it's
I
a
remember,
if you look at how many rich people in America became rich because of Prohibition, it's amazing. Uh,
really.
how many new millionaires appeared in America during the Prohibition? I don't know from
That's
what. Just
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, here, as you probably know, there's also a thriving Irish community. When
hmm
I came here in the 90s, they were already celebrating St. Patrick's Day. They used to close off the whole of Arbat and have like
hmm
a procession down there. And the Irish Arbat, what's it called? The Arbat Irish House, and
hmm
the all the duty free was run by the Irish, and they did a lot of trading in Russia and a lot of business. A lot of the people doing up the houses with their paints and
hmm
stuff, they're still here actually today, some of those
Oh,
guys.
cool,
A lot
cool.
of industry, yeah, that run by the Irish. You'd be surprised, they're here. They've integrated pretty well.
Yeah,
Engineering.
yeah. That's excellent. Um, we've got to close up on that note, but we'll get the link to the event. Um, it, I'll put up an advertisement here in a second at the end of the show, so
Oh, that's
they can
cool. And
see
we'll
it.
give
Yeah.
everybody also a discount code. And of course, so as we're expecting, if you happen to be in town, you and your partner can come in for free and dance a little bit with us and, experience the Irish experience. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, I haven't been to Ireland. I can't go to Ireland now because I'd probably get
Well, who
arrested
knows,
otherwise.
But,
But
but as the geopolitics changes, and the
yes,
whole of
yes.
Europe becomes very right wing and pro-Russian, it should all change, right?
I'm waiting for that so I can go to Ireland. I've been to Scotland, I've been to England, but I haven't been to Wales yet. But I haven't been to Ireland either, so any part of
Well,
Ireland. So, anyways,
all ahead.
thank you,
Thank you so much. Thank you as well, very much. It's
everybody. Thank you
been
for
a real
joining the
pleasure.
show, and go out and have a couple of beers or whiskeys.
Thank you very
Uh,
much. In fact, I'm off to the Irish bar now
oof.
to meet with there's another group we're working with called the Moscow Pals, and
hmm
we get together every weekend, every Sunday evening in an Irish bar. So,
Oh, nice, nice,
okay.
very nice.
Thanks so much
Everybody,
then. Take
cheers,
care.
cheers.
Have a good one.
hmm
Bye now.